Call the meeting to order this morning. The Board of Supervisors may by motion recess into executive session to receive legal advice from the board's attorney on any item concerned in the agenda pursuant to Arizona Revised Statutes 38-43103, portion A, 3 and 4. The motion and action to call for an executive session to be held October 16th, 2017 at 9 a.m. for discussion and consultation with legal counsel in accordance with ARS 38-43103, portions A, 3, and 4 to discuss items noticed on the agenda. This morning, we've had a very tragic event happen in Las Vegas, Nevada, city just not too far away from us this morning. And we have with us this morning Reverend Jessica Cooper. Please, if you'll all rise.
If we just would have just a moment of silence, please. Father, as a nation, we come together, and we come together with all the people that are praying for the city of Las Vegas. And Father, we pray for those families that have lost 50 plus people. And Father, we ask you, Lord, to comfort them and send people to comfort them. We pray healing for the 500 plus people that have been injured. And Father, we pray healing over that community. Father, we thank you, Lord. That was a tragedy, Lord, that you will bring about the community to come together. And we will hear good things that will come from this, Father. So, Lord, we just pray that every need will be met, that, Lord, that you would send provision for these people. Father, we pray, Lord, for our county. Father, and all the people that stand here and represent different areas of our county. And Father, we thank you, Lord, for the people that you've chosen to be our county supervisors and all the people that stand and work closely beside them. Father, we pray, Lord, for wisdom. We pray that they would be visionaries. Father, we pray healing and health and wholeness over them. Father, we pray protection over them and their family members as they serve, Lord, as you've called them to serve and you've placed them in their position for this time. Father, we thank you, Lord, for unity and peace, Lord, over this meeting. And we pray this in the precious name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, if you follow me, pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Going on to official business to become before the board. I'm sorry. Motion and action for the executive session to be held on October 16th.
So moved.
A motion and a second. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. On to official business. Discussion of pending legal or contemplated litigation claims and demands. Mr. Esplin.
Nothing to report.
Item number 2, committee and legislative reports. Starting to my left, Supervisor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I attended the Quad State meeting. We had a lot of updates. One of them was on travel management. BLM is claiming a regulatory authority in some counties, but not in ours. Wildland fire strategy is up. We put them in touch with our emergency management to help with the federal issue. Mojave tortoise, I'm afraid that the rulemaking might not happen as it takes about 3 years, and the Trump administration is way behind the ball on getting anything started, so it looks like we'll be stuck with the same regulations that we've had. You might have seen that we had an update on wildland fires, and they've gone from 3 million acres to 6 million acres a year, and now we're at the 10 million acre. and it's up to $2 billion, and to fight them. And this year, I think they told us that it was up to $2.3 billion already. And that the other good news is that climate change is alive and well and was funded through 18. Kind of an update on our cybersecurity. Just to give everybody how easy it is to steal money. College just had, I think it was $1.8, $1.9 million in bonding capacity for a new facility field. Somebody just sent an email saying, oh, by the way, we've changed our email address and the money here, and they lost all their money. You know, it's that easy to do. You know, somebody can do it. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Bishop.
Thank you, Chairman Watson. I attended the September County Supervisors Association Board of Directors meeting in Phoenix, where I introduced our new supervisor, Lois Wakamoto, to the membership. The guest speakers during that meeting were Hunter Moore from the National Resources Policy Advisor for the Governor's Office, and also Tom Bukowski, the Director of Arizona Department of Water Resources. They gave an overview of the Governor's water solution stakeholder process and also shared an interesting PowerPoint of the historical history of water law in Arizona and how it all came about. I also introduced our water attorney, Mr. Patrick Cunningham of High Ground. Mr. Cunningham provided copies of Chairman Watson's letter regarding our opposition regarding the proposed transfer of water from Mojave Valley to central Arizona. And Mr. Cunningham was able to sneak out the back door and meet informally with Mr. Bukowski and Mr. Moore after their presentation. And Mr. Moore did come back later and had lunch with us, and he knew Mr. Cunningham on first name and said that Mr. Cunningham provided him with 3 copies of the chairman's letter. So he's working hard for us down there in Phoenix. The CSA staff also reviewed financial issues for 2018 and beyond, including the ongoing juvenile corrections cost shift, the pension debt, and the preservation of county and lieu lottery monies. Discussions continued regarding the county policy proposal summary for the 2018 legislative session, and I notified CSA staff that I will be the Legislative Policy Committee legislative liaison for this year, replacing Supervisor Moss. That's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Bishop. To my extreme right, Supervisor Angus.
I do. We had our EBTSIR trust meeting last week. Everything went well. No surprises. We have a healthy balance. The trust voted to allow the Board of Supervisors, if they wish, to take a funding holiday up to $1 million. And even with that, we're approximately $1 million over the recommended fund balance as recommended by the actuary. So we're doing fine, and I want to thank Human Resources, Erin Collins Associates, and all the county employees for utilizing some of our wellness programs that we've put in place. I think that's why we're seeing some of the results that we are. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Wakamoto.
Thank you. Along with going with Supervisor Bishop to the meeting in Phoenix, I was also able to have a meeting with Alvin Stump from ADOT about the proposed roundabouts in District 5. We are continuing to discuss this and safety issues, and we'll have another meeting in Prescott this 13th, no, the 19th, sorry, of October.
Thank you. Approval of the August 17th, 2017 and September 5th, 2017 Board of Supervisors regular minutes.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Questions, additions, or corrections? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. Now we will move on to the call of the public. Those wishing to address the board at the call of the public regarding matters not on the board agenda must fill out and submit to the clerk a call of the public request to speak form located in the back of the room prior to the meeting. Action taken as a result of the public comments will be limited to responding to criticism, referral to staff, or placing the matter on a future agenda. Comments are restricted to items not on the regular agenda with the exception of the consent agenda and must relate to matters within the jurisdiction of this board. First person to speak, Wayne Hollins.
Good morning, Chairman and Supervisors. My name is Wayne Holland, 4825 North Mormon Flat Road, Golden Valley. Again, talked about trash and recycling. I've been in contact with the Keep Arizona Beautiful program, and they're putting together a contact list of officials and stakeholders to have a meeting probably after the first of the year to show us what they can do to help us on those problems here. Also, I attended the Kingman City Clean City Commission meeting the other day. Quite interesting. Not sure why we don't have anything like that, but I don't know. We also, the recycling, Kingman does have a recycling program. They gather the recycling products up, as you see, and they haul it down to the sanitation yard, and they spread it on the ground, and they pick out the contaminants, and then they load it back on a truck and run it down the street to Bulldog and pretty much just give it away. They started the program in 2008, and that's all the farther they've progressed with it. They don't have a baler. They don't have a sorting system. They don't have anything to make it pay for itself. It's a tough business, and they're making it tougher by not doing anything other than collecting it and giving it away. So it's costing them money. Of course, we don't do anything, so it's not costing us anything. But we need to see that change, and we need to support a program, whether it be our own or a combination of the citizens, the county, and the city doing something. Not just us, the county, and not just us, the people. It's a problem for everybody, and so everybody needs to be part of the solution. So, and Gene says it's recycling's in the future. Well, the rest of the country is pretty much in the future. We're still sitting back here in the past. So hopefully with this going on, we can try to play catch up here and make recycling should at least pay for itself. It may not make us a whole bunch of money, but I guess that won't matter if we destroy the planet. Won't need to be recycling anything or anything else for that matter. So I'm hoping you all will be interested in and attend a meeting when it does come about, and I'd like to see you there. Thank you for your support.
Thank you, Mr. Holland. Michael Boone?
That was fast.
Yeah, I expected that. Good morning, Board. I'm here before you to clear up a discussion and the pedestrian comments made by Ms. Angus last board meeting regarding grants. I'm kind of shocked in 2017 there's such a confusion from a sitting supervisor what grants really are and how they're paid back.
Mr. Boone, did we get your address?
2210 Palo Verde North, Lake Havasu City. Anyway, if you go into a grant with an evil heart and the intention not to follow the instructions and do what's required of the grant, there's a high probability that grant's going to be recalled. If you try to take on issues that you know are subsequent to that grant, knowing you're going to fail, that grant will fail. There are hundreds and hundreds of law enforcement grants out there from Homeland Security that are functioning very effectively, and they're following the contract, and there's been no threat to remove those contracts. I made a point of checking with a grant specialist from the federal government. But they also can be renewed and be a great benefit, and I want to make sure the public doesn't get deterred by your comments to thinking grants aren't a way to help support the sheriff's budget or augment the sheriff's budget. Also, again, like in the last meeting I mentioned, there's a perception that people that are campaign managers of people should not be sitting on boards which affect rules and regulations, or should be sitting on boards which their companies are benefiting from county grants. county contracts. So I asked you to go back and look at some of your contracts and find out who's sitting on your boards, because the perception is it's an unfair basis to other businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Leanne Hoagland-Smith.
Good morning, Chairman, board members. Leanne Hoagland-Smith, 3981 South Centennial Road, Golden Valley, Arizona. First, Chairman Watson, thank you so much for acknowledging that human tragedy in Las Vegas and bringing a pastor here to join everybody in thoughtful prayer and unity. I really appreciate that leadership in you. Currently, with the budget shortfall and the proposed remedies, including closing rural libraries, a 3.5% across-the-board cut, transferring excess funds, sometimes a problem is really a symptom disguised as a problem. What happens is one can't see the forest for the trees. What may make sense is to step back and look at the 30,000-foot viewpoint. For example, 2001, the annual budget for this county was $147.7 million. There were approximately 1,200 employees serving a population of approximately 160,000 people. Fast forward to now. The proposed annual budget is $273.1 million, with approximately the same number of employees and a projected population of 205,249 individuals. When we do the math, the employees have stayed the same. The budget grew by 84.9%, while the population only grew 28.4%. Pretty dramatic increase, and just cannot be explained by shortages in retirement funds, CPI index, which only increased 38% in the same time frame. One reason I moved here, my husband and I moved here, was because it was Republican county, and Republicans are known for smaller government. Yet the math reveals just the opposite. Leaders must lead by example. When a county has nearly a 20% poverty level, driving expensive, low gas mileage vehicles, as evidenced by the Ford Expedition, several Ford Explorers, a plethora of F-350s, does not respect those who are attempting to make ends meet, especially given the high percentage of retired citizens. County employees are to serve the people. The people are not here to serve the county employees or county government. I encourage this board to return to the 30,000-foot perspective and embrace a fiscal attitude of smaller government. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Roxanne Ortiz.
Hello, Board of Supervisors. My name is Royanne Ortiz. I live at 1550 Monte Vista Drive in Bullhead City. I am here during the open session because there are 5 items on the consent agenda that I assume I can speak on now and not have to wait for the, or I think I'd be allowed to talk on it during the consent agenda. So 3 of them have to do with the procurement department. When I was here at your last meeting, I asked if the supervisor of the procurement department could contact me so we could get together and discuss issues. I was never contacted. I didn't take the initiative to call her. I expected her to call me. Just like she said, the government serves us, the taxpayers. On one of those consent agenda items, there was a touting of the National Procurement Institute has given us a quality procurement award. Well, you know how you get that. You fill out an application that you've done every year for 13, 14 years, and you pay $400, and guess what you get? So that's no recognition of having a quality procurement organization. There's so many red flags going on from what I see as a person who has done auditing of the procurement function that it's driving me absolutely crazy. So I would like to recommend to this Board of Supervisors that you get an outside audit done of your procurement department. Because if there's any waste, fraud, abuse, it's where the money's being spent. Thank you very much.
That ends
Mr.
our-
Chairman, I
all
believe if we have any accusations, I personally have never seen Becky or her procurement department do anything unethical or unreasonable. We can always do things better, and if I would encourage if anybody had anything, any evidence or any items that they believe that we were doing illegally or immorally or unethically, that they please provide it to me, because as far as I'm aware, I've not come across anything, any improprieties in the procurement department. I think they're doing a wonderful job. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews. That completes our call to the public. We have a proclamation this morning declaring the month of October 2017 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in Mojave County. Whereas in the United States, an average of 20 people are physically abused by intimate partners every minute. This equates to more than 10 million abuse victims annually. Whereas domestic violence is prevalent in every community and affects all ages, regardless of socioeconomic status, sexual orientation, gender, race, religion, or nationality. And whereas domestic violence is a nationwide epidemic in which Mojave County is not immune to the effects of our community, our family, our friends, and our neighbors. Whereas the crime of domestic violence violates an individual's privacy, dignity, security, humanity, and whereas the impact of domestic violence is widespread, affecting the moral fabric of society as a whole. Now, therefore, we as Mojave County Board of Supervisors do hereby proclaim October 2017 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and along with Mojave County Attorney Victim Witness Program, urge all citizens to actively participate and schedule activities and programs in the state of Arizona to work toward the elimination of violence in the home. And with that, thank you very much. On to the consent agenda. The following items listed under the consent agenda will be considered as a group, acted upon by one motion with no separate discussion of said items, unless a board member so requests. In that event, the item will be removed from the consent agenda for separate discussion and action. Items to be removed. Supervisor Johnson.
None, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Bishop.
None, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Angus. Supervisor Wakamoto.
None.
We're batting 1,000%.
Chairman Watson, I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda, items 5 through 33.
We have a motion and a second. Adoption of items 5 through 33. Those in favor? Any? She can't hear. Is that better? Thank you. Any further discussion? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Take the prerogative of moving our agenda somewhat. We've had a request by some folks to address items 48, 49, and 50. So do I need a motion for that movement?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to move items 48, 49, and 50 to the forefront of the agenda. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. So we will move on now to item number 48. Discussion, possible action, the donation of the 1994 Cavalco mobile home to Mojave County for the use of storage at Mojave Valley for Mojave Community Park. I have a number of people that want to speak to this issue.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Certainly, Supervisor.
Not really a public hearing on this. I put this on the agenda. We accepted the donation so that the board could forgive the back taxes on it. And it never was transferred to the park. So it's still, and it wasn't put on the county's insurance. And it doesn't have, it's not ADA compliant. So what needs to be done is it needs to be transferred to the nonprofit to take it off Mojave County's liability. That's the reason I placed this on.
Okay. Thank you, Supervisor Johnson. Mehdi Arzami would like to speak to item 48.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, supervisors. My name is Mehdi Arzami, 1896 Clear Lake Drive, Fort Mojave, Arizona. Today I wear a different hat. I'm a board member of the Mojave Valley Community Park, and I represent the board of the Mojave Valley Community Park. Do you want me to speak about 48, 49, and 50 together, or do you want me to just item 48?
I'll give you the opportunity to speak to all three items.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Since I'm representing our community as well as a board that we have there, we were totally confused, and we don't understand why Supervisor Johnson decided to, proceed with this item on the agenda, because everything was already agreed and was supervisors already voted on that in the past. If the issue of the audit was the problem, well, all it would take is a phone call to Director Letosky, and Director Letosky would be able to, in a few minutes, would explain the procedure that we have, and the statement and the recap that we had already there. The agreement that we had with the Mojave County was very simple for the board and for the Mojave Valley Park to spend and invest into the park, provide the receipts and the invoices to the county, and get reimbursed. So it's very simple, and I believe that, Director Letosky would be able to attest to that everything was done. He was out there many times inspecting it and going on that. And the reason, maybe there's a confusion here, because the reason we structure it that way, because it's a true community park. We are trying to maximize the use of the money that we get. If you look at the list of the items that you see here, you'll see a whole bunch of tri-state building material items. These are the reason that you see it there, because Michael Paul is one of the members of the community that we have, and he agreed to give us everything at cost, not the retail value. We have about 50 or so businesses, contractors, I would say individuals, and all that basically come together, and we are trying to put this park together. And when you look at the park, it's a beautiful park, and the community has been using it. Unfortunately, Supervisor Johnson, I believe, is the only supervisor who hasn't visited the park. Like you, other four, they visited. And especially, right after that deceptive video that was done by one of Supervisor Johnson's ex-teammate, that showed, basically a pile of, concrete, and also, some dirt, which was not really, was very deceptive. That was basically not the fact. The fact is that, they didn't show even one tree on that, video. There are 500 shade trees in that park. There is 1.7 miles of 5-foot sidewalk in that park. There is acre and acre of green out there. And the facility like this, softball, football field, soccer field, there, everything is done. So, it is very disappointing when we see the value that is appraised for by one of the Phoenix executive board members of Legacy Foundation. The value of the park right now is $8 million or more. And what we did is that every dollar that we had, we stretched it to $3, $4, $5. And a lot of people are using the park. I invite Supervisor Johnson to attend our annual Easter egg hunt. We have 2,000 kids lining up there, and 30,000 eggs packed with candies are out there. We have a volunteer pilot who flies over and makes that exciting for the kids, and as well as enjoying the picnic environment that we create there. How can we tell those kids that, we want to shut it down or, have initiative to trip it or do whatever, I can see with this initiative? I can assure you that, a lot of our people in the community are very disappointed that, instead of patting us in the back, just like the other 4 supervisors did, we are hearing always negative comments from Supervisor Johnson. I believe that, this is a very unique...
Would you like to explain the negative comments I've made, Mr. Azami? You're making a lot of accusations here. I don't control people who used to work for me or anybody at the county level here who used to work for the county. If you're going to make these statements, let's back it up, son.
Absolutely. Supervisor Johnson, when we started, this community park together, you're the only negative vote when you see for a fact that, this is a true community park. These are 50...
No, the reason I was a negative vote, Mr. Azami, was the fact that when this was started, it was started as an improvement district. And I met with Mr. Sakwa brought it up. He explained that the community was going to go in and fund this themselves. Then it became the idea that the county was going to do it. And the county does not have the money to do that. And that is the reason. It's only financial issues. It has nothing to do with an extra park. We do not have the money to fund this park, sir.
May I speak?
Thank you, Mr. Azami.
May I speak? The fact is that,
We're getting past your time allotment.
Yes.
I did agree to let you speak to all 3 items, so let's wrap it up pretty quickly if you can.
Sure. Can I conclude then?
Please proceed, but make it short.
Okay. So the items that we have before us, the rumor that was passed on about, the school not being part of the maintenance and they're not going to do it is not true. I invited Superintendent Riley here, and he was going to speak on that behalf. Actually, they were out there on last Friday, spreading overseeing the park, and they're continuing to do that. They mentioned about the office mobile home that we have out there. It is on storage. It is not for use. It doesn't need to be AD. It's basically to keep some of the repair items in there. So there is absolutely no items in there that it can be cause anything like that. Any questions?
Are we just talking about 48, or can we talk about all of them?
I gave him the permission to speak to all 3.
Okay, so then I just want to ask a question. So, because I was confused too as to why these were on the agenda. I was told that it was because the school district was backing out of the agreement, and we have all of the resolutions that we passed as a board on here. And I was surprised because there was nothing in the backup that proved that. It was just, I asked the county administration, they said that they believe it was a verbal. So that is what brought my confusion, and I did speak to Mr. Zarmi, and to clear it up, because it seems like it might be just a misunderstanding or some misinformation. So if we could just maybe clear that up, we don't even have to go through any of this, because we did vote on it.
We did vote on it. Yes, we did. So, your recommendation?
Is to clear up, if there's a problem, Supervisor Johnson brought this up, if there was a problem, if he was under the impression that the school district was going to back out of their end of our agreement, I think that Superintendent Fry is here to clear that up.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, I think when we're getting, I have no problem with Mr. Azami talking about all 3 items at once, but we need to take them one at a time because it gets confusing on each.
Okay.
I think each one can take a motion.
Let's go ahead and take item 48.
Mr. Chairman, item 48, it is a storage facility. It is it was contributed by myself actually to the park for the hunt for the heads and miscellaneous items that we have. It is not an office. It is not a habitable thing. It is just a storage, sir.
Would appear to me, because it's for storage, why would there be a need for action? Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could clarify a little bit, our risk management department has been down there, regardless of whether the storage facility is on ASEP's building list. You know, ASEP covers the county for all liabilities, and we try to include the buildings that are necessary, and risk management is in the process of making sure that that is included. But basically, the county owns the building. The Board of Supervisors voted to accept that building so that, you know, the liability, it shouldn't be under anybody's umbrella policy. However, if you ask for a desire, you know, it would be a desire to, you know, not own the building, but have it, if your foundation wished to actually take ownership of it as an LLC, that would be fine. I'd develop a board action form and put that in front of the board for consideration. Otherwise, it's our facility. But could I provide a little bit of history about the park? Just a little background.
Sure.
You know, when we originally contemplated this endeavor, this partnership, what the proposal was that there was $250,000 by an anonymous donor that needed matching funds, and the county was asked to provide those matching funds, and that was all the county was asked to provide it for. Through the foundation, they would try to maximize the dollars for the construction of the park as much as possible, which you all did a marvelous job in doing so, and then the school district would maintain the facility and also have free use. And I believe the park is free use for everybody who lives down in the valley, which is admirable. So the county, after everything was improved, the county would take ownership or lease ownership of the facility, but not until all the funds were exhausted. And that's because the county has a limitation by statute on how much money we can actually accept as donations, for whatever reason, it's in state law, on the facility. So we wanted to keep it out of county hands until we got the nod from the foundation that all improvements were completed, and then we would move forward with the lease agreement. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct, and we are not done yet.
That's
we are
my understanding
continuing
also.
to work on that. And the way that it was structured, and I'm sure you are fully aware of the multiple discussions with Supervisor Moss on this issue about, you know, how we want to, the community wants to keep adding to the park to the point that it's saturated, and then we are exhausted, then we would be able to, you know, create the opportunity for the county, find a way for the county to be able to take over.
But at least at this time, what I wanted to tell the board is the risk management is looking at this trailer. It is being used for storage. There are some deficiencies that we need to correct. It's the county owns or accepted the donation of the facility, and we're also working with ASEP to make sure that it is on the list and properly insured.
Mr. Chairman,
that's where we stand.
Mr. Hendricks, we'll be more than happy to see. This is the first time I know about it. If I have the list, we'll be more than happy to put it on our wish list and get it done.
Thank you.
Thank you,
I guess
Mr.
the
Hart.
questions I would have of Mr. Hendricks are, when I brought this up, the county had no keys for this facility?
I have no idea, Supervisor Johnson.
The item on the agenda
You know,
is the
it was-
fact that we took a trailer in, and what I thought was, and I obviously didn't look at it as much as I should have, that the board was forgiving the taxes on a trailer that was going to be given to the community park. Okay. Whether I agree or disagree with that, that's what we did, and that's fine. But it was never given to the park. We still have the liability. Once we have the liability, we have to make it ADA compliant when we bring something in. We have to put it on the insurance, which we didn't. I mean, you can say, yeah, well, everything is included, but it wasn't. But at least in my opinion, would be that this just needs to be transferred to the park and taken out of our liability. It just hadn't been done. It's just a follow-up to something that should have been done at that meeting.
Excuse me, but did Mr. Hendricks say that the county already owns it?
And yes, Mr. Chairman, the Board of Supervisors accepted ownership of that trailer. So it is owned by the county, and it was for the purpose and use of the storage, to store the maintenance equipment for the park.
Correct.
And I believe the doors are locked. There's padlock on the doors. The deficiencies that we saw were like skirting issues. Whether it needs to be ADA accessible is, I'm not sure that is a consideration, but there is certainly things that need to be done to make it a safer facility.
And Mr. Chairman, Mr. Hendricks, we're more than happy to know the list, and as a community, we'll be able to take care of it. We are doing much more than that, so this is very minimal compared to what we're doing there.
Thank you, Mr. Armani. Supervisor Johnson, do you have a recommendation then to?
What my recommendation would be, the way I thought it was presented to the board was that we were just forgiving the taxes and it was going to be given to the nonprofit. That would be mine. If I was going to make a motion, I'd make a motion to give the 1994 Cavco mobile home, or have direct staff to give the 1994 Cavco mobile home and all liability to the Mojave Valley Fort Mojave Community Park as a donation.
If that's a form of a motion?
That would be the motion.
Mr. Chairman, we are not interested to get it back.
Pardon me, sir?
We are not interested to get it back, sir. Mojave Valley Park, has a goal and objective that we are going forward. We are agreeing to bring it to the up-to-date based on the Mr. Hendricks, recommendation. But I think that is part of the community park, and we are hoping to carry it that way to the ultimate goal that we have. So.
They don't want it back.
Mr. Hendricks, was that part of our motion when we voted on this in 2000, whenever we did it, 13, 14, was this part of it, that we took that motorhome and that it was ours? Because if we voted on it, wouldn't we have to reconsider it, not just change it?
And that's a good point. I don't have the exact wording for the motion, and I'm not sure we could pull that up quickly. So to be able to provide the board with that information, we would need to continue this so I could research it, get that information, and give it.
I'd like to ask Supervisor Johnson a question. So your biggest problem with this is the liability?
Yes.
For the county?
Yes.
And I'm sorry, I really don't remember. Did we talk about that? Do you remember talking about
No.
that? Was that?
No, it was the forgiving of the taxes is what the big deal was, and the board voted, the majority of the board voted to forgive the taxes on this trailer so that it could be used for the park. But actually, looking back at the agenda item, it looked like the county did accept the trailer, which was never discussed during the board meeting at all.
Okay, then maybe we could have administration work with the park committee and come up with something that, we could have set in stone that everyone understands what our decision is.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Angus, we do have a liability insurance that covers the park.
Okay, so can you work together and maybe we can do something that would make Supervisor Johnson happy and take some liability off from the county?
That'll be the day.
We can certainly come up with a proposal, but currently Supervisor Johnson said that he wants to give the trailer to the LLC. LLC said that they did not want to have the trailer. To give something to somebody, I would assume there would have to be an acceptance. So right now, I don't have a good solution. Maybe I can work with Supervisor Johnson to see if he has a compromise, but as stated on what he wishes to do, there is no solution today.
And Supervisor Johnson does have a motion on the floor.
Right, and to further clarify to Supervisor Angus, when I checked, we didn't have access to the trailer, and that's what really brought to my attention that we didn't give it, that we didn't accept it for them and pass it on. That's what started this when I looked at it, because I had people saying that it wasn't ADA compliant and everything, and I said, well, it's not ours, what do I care, and so then when they brought it up to my attention, I called and checked, and we didn't have access to the trailer, and then reading the agenda, we had accepted it. So then once we know that it is our liability, we've got to take care of it. Some kind of
Yes, we need to do our motion.
I have a motion, but no second at this point.
Right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion just so that we can get the vote.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We have an offer to give the trailer to the park, and evidently a reluctance for acceptance, so.
Well, I still have a problem because, again, we voted to do something, and I don't know if this is proper at this point to do, since we already voted on it. I'm just confused.
I think I can give a little bit of clarification. It was my understanding that we waived the taxes on the trailer. It was my understanding the trailer would then go to the park.
Mine too.
Is that your
Yes.
recollection?
That's not what happened.
So, at this point, I think it's probably reasonable to assume that we have that ability to give the trailer to the park.
And Chairman Watson, also, if I could also provide some clarification. I think Supervisor Johnson is correct, and I think you're also correct that that's what you guys thought, and that's what you debated and talked about, but I think if you look at what the agenda item says, it's accept the donation. So I believe that's what Supervisor Johnson is saying, is that we accepted the donation. Now, to answer Supervisor Angus's question of whether we can bring it back, yes, I believe it can be brought back and it can be voted. This is a proper motion and it's been seconded and we can make a vote on it. If it's declined or if it's in the negative, then it'll be dead. If it's in the affirmative, then it'll move forward. Whether they want to accept it or not, that'll be the next step, and they may not accept it. And then it dies at that point. If somebody doesn't want to accept something, we can't impose it on somebody. They can't. If they don't want to take it, then they won't want to take it. But that would be the next discussion, the next step, if it was voted in the affirmative.
Wouldn't it just be better if the nonprofit and the county work together like they did for this whole park and come up with a reasonable solution instead of sort of making it us against them and so all this contention? It's a thing that I think could be easily solved between the committee and the administration, and hopefully in a way that will make Supervisor Johnson and some of the board that has questions happy.
I don't think, Chairman Watson, I don't think it's contention. I think it's confusion, and we need to clarify what we voted on and what we thought we voted on. So if it wasn't clear in the motion that we voted on, I don't know, I'm not comfortable with Mojave County owning a trailer that sits on private property, if that's actually what happened. So I think we need to revisit it and clear it up, and this may be the way to do it.
And I think there is confusion because the county didn't bring us something saying, yeah, we looked at this trailer and the value is $20,000, or we have to do any, work on it or anything like that. That's why I think it was just, when we looked at it, it was forgiving of taxes. So it caught me by surprise also.
And Mr. Chairman, I do have the motion here. It was accept the donation of a 1994 CAVCO mobile home to be used for the Mojave Valley Fort Mojave Community Park as needed, and waive the 2015 personal property taxes in the amount of $77.55 in the upcoming 2016 personal property taxes that are due to Mojave County on the donated mobile home. That was the recommended motion. And it was approved. So that was the approved motion.
It's still not clear.
Well, accept the donation. So the Mojave County accepted the donation of the mobile home. So we own it.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Mr. Chairman, may I add one item? Why can't we look at the bigger picture and come to a resolution? Why can't we look at the bigger picture that this community is using this park and, come with a resolution between, the county and us to make sure that, as Supervisor Angus said. So why can't we just, come together and find a solution to this problem to satisfy Supervisor Johnson?
Okay. I understand where you're going. I've got a motion on the floor that we need to act upon. Any further discussion? There being no further discussion, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed?
Aye.
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 And I would recommend that the next motion be the possibility of item 48, 49, and 50 being in one motion to address these concerns with those involved in the park, with staff, and with members of the board. That would be my recommendation, so.
And come back to the board with a clear understanding of this park and the maintenance and as related to the original agreements?
Right, addressing item 48, 49, and 50.
Could I just say something? I wasn't here when this passed, but I was reading the April 6, 2015 minutes that concerned this, and I think there were a lot of things, being new, but I think there are a lot of things in the discussion that were discussed as in terms of what was expected and how things were done, and what Mr. Azarmi said about the $190,000 donation that could only come to a county. I have certain expectations from these particular minutes because I think they were outlined as we move forward. And if the county has already voted on it, I think we should have copies of these minutes for all the supervisors to look at also.
Okay, I'm sure staff will.
Mr. Chairman, also in that, if that's the motion and it gets passed, when we're looking at monies, one part that struck out to me was the fact that the board had received a $5,000 donation for the park from the Hoovers, and we released that money back to the park, and the Hoovers have, I don't know, I guess millions of dollars of restitution to be paid. I think we should look at that money, going into restitution and maybe not so much the park. That was just one of the things I noticed in the payback and the funds, because there was a difference between, I thought we were paying the nonprofit the money where we were cutting checks to individuals. The agreement was with the nonprofit, not with individuals. That was just something, if this motion goes through, things that need to be looked at.
Mr. Chairman, just want to make sure that we understand that, when I joined the Mojave Valley Community Park with Chip Sherrill, one of the conditions we had is for Mr. Hoover not to be part of the park. And that was done a long time before we even touched the dirt. So Mr. Hoover has nothing to do with the park that you see out there. And the new board that we have, and basically Chip Sherrill and myself started this new park committee. Mr. Hoover had to resign from that and had nothing to do with the new generation of the board before even we touched the dirt.
But he was still a member when it was brought to the board, because I was the one that brought it up, that he was still on the board.
That's not true, sir.
Well, it is true.
When that item was brought up to you, if you go back and you look at our minutes and our organization, you'll find out that Mr. Hoover was not part of our group. When we touched, we started with the Mojave Valley Park at the location that is there.
At the time that it was brought before the board and brought up the corporation filings, and he was still on the board.
The original one, when Mr. Sockwell was involved and others, yes, he was part of it. But when I got on board with Mr. Sherrill and all that, one of the conditions we had was Mr. Hoover to be off the board. And from that point on, we progressed to start with the land and everything else.
I'm just saying, I think it's a $5,000 donation that went in that we should look at.
Okay, thank you.
So the maintenance going forward, because that's the issue I heard when I inquired why this was on the agenda for number 50. Are we all clear on that? Do we need clarification?
Mr. Chairman and Supervisor Angus, I think if we go back, maybe you can pull up the motion. I think it was to come back to the board, and the board was going to vote if they would accept the park. It was never, it wasn't accepted at that time.
That's correct.
Yeah.
My understanding is that it's $250,000 for the assisting in building the park. But at that time, it was not accepted as a park. Is that
That was
your
my
understanding?
recollection. That's my recollection, too. That's why I put it on, to move one way or the other, you know?
And Mr. Chairman, that is the correct understanding, because as I said, if it comes to the county, because of the bylaws that you have and the procurement and all that, we cannot contribute the way that we are contributing to the park. So what the decision was for the committee to continue taking care of the park and adding values to the park until we are saturated with everything that we can do, then the discussion can start and work with, the Mojave County.
Okay.
Who's maintaining it now?
It is a joint venture between school. As a matter of fact, this last Friday, all the grass got overseeded by the school. Anytime that there is a tournament, they always maintain it. We are working together. There are about 50 private, public, and we are not individuals. We are like a group that basically work together. Like 2 Saturdays ago, Superintendent Riley Fry and 2 of the very well-known doctors in our community and a whole bunch of other professionals, they were on their knees, installing conduits and backfilling and all that. This is a park that, is being built by the community, and it is basically serving the community. Actually, teams from Supervisor Johnson District, they come and play in the tournaments over there. A soccer team, baseball field and all that, they come over in the Colorado River Cities tournaments that, they participate and they use that. Instead of investing money, going to San Diego, all that, they're coming basically to the park for the tournament. So it's a true community park, and a lot of individuals, and you've been there many times, seeing all the activities that's going on. It's going, that's what it is. So yes, it is being maintained by the school and by the, private sector as needed.
And Mr. Chairman, the board motion discussed, obviously, there was some discussion about allowing the LLC and the group to take maximum, to be able to maximize the amount of donations and be able to do it without the county having control over the park. But the motion was to have staff work with Chip Sherrill for a long-term lease agreement. It was going to be a cooperative agreement between 3 entities: Mojave County, Chip Sherrill, and the school district. And the school district's responsibility clearly in the motion was to maintain the park. If at some future date we get the nod to move forward with finalizing the agreement and bringing them back in front of the board, and let's just say if the school district decides that they don't want to be involved, then the board would have to make a business decision at that time on whether you all would want to still go forward with it. And we've done some studies about whether the county could take over that responsibility, and the answer is that it would, that our current Parks Department wouldn't be able to do that because of the expense. So it would be something the board would have to reconsider. And yes, I've heard that discussion also, that the school district wasn't as interested in entering into an agreement for the maintenance of the park. And from an administrative perspective, I would like to hear what Mr. Fry has to say regarding that issue.
And Mr. Chairman, one of the things, if I may add to Mr. Hendrick's comment, that's why you have that 120 days clause in the agreement for the cancellation. So when we get to that point that we are ready to convey to the Mojave County, that 120 days can be exercised.
I was waiting for, did you want to
No,
accept?
I thought Mr. Hendricks said he wanted to hear it from the school district,
So
what their intention, because that's what we keep hearing. Let's just talk about the elephant in the room. We keep hearing that the district wants to back out. So I'm ready to hear it.
So may I excuse then?
Well, we could have Mr. Fry up, or you can answer the question.
Sure.
Chair Watson, Board of Supervisors, staff, thank you for allowing me a few minutes. I'm Riley Fry. I'm the superintendent of schools for the Colorado River Schools. I also live in Fort Mojave, 5612 Wishing Place. The district has absolutely no desire in any way to reduce our efforts or our partnership that is agreed upon. We are the primary beneficiary of that park. It is immediately adjacent to River Valley High School. It is used on a daily basis, and we continue to serve there via volunteer effort, as well as through our contract with GCA Services, who manages our facilities. Our equipment, we even have redundancy in our water systems, et cetera, that allow us to help out with the park at every possible opportunity. We have no desire in any way to back out or reduce our efforts there.
Does that answer your question?
Thank you very much.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. Is that a school board decision? Is there the school board has voted on that?
That is not. That is actually from an agreement that was made at the initiation of the park.
Agreement made with who?
With administration. And I can also state that it is in the contract with GCA Services. That is approved by the school board.
All right. So the school board approved the contract, you're saying? That's what I was asking.
Correct.
Any further questions of Mr. Fry?
No, and thank you all for, when Supervisor Moss brought this up, and it was a really outside the box, everybody had wanted this park in Mojave Valley for so long, and it was needed, and it was just a way to get it done, and everyone has buy-in, and you guys have done fantastic work, and I want to thank you.
Thank you.
Any further question for me?
Does that answer all the questions?
Well, going back to the agenda items, it was just the clarification on the trailer, so that's something that we have to look at, because if it is our trailer, then we should have the keys, we should be responsible, we should have the skirting done, we should have all those things done to cover the county's liability. We just never have brought back the audit of our money spent. That was what I was looking for, and then because it's my understanding on the park that it would come back to us for acceptance or denial of the park into the park system. Just bringing it back, because it appears the park it's pretty much finished, or at least from what I understand.
Mr. Chairman, I can vouch that we're going to work with the county to make sure that all those items are going to be satisfactory to the Mojave County Building Department or any other department that Mr. Hendricks is going to assign, and we make sure that it's been taken care of. Because as I said, the amount of money that Supervisor Johnson are imposing on us is decimal to the amount of effort and money that is being spent on that park. It is north of $8 million. And the beneficiaries are, people, youth of our community. You should come out and see those 2,000 kids when they are lining up for the Easter egg hunt. So, I mean, anything that I wish, that would be communicated with us directly instead of taking your time and taking some valuable time of all the private people that are now here, and we would resolve it. This is the first time I hear that, it's not AD approved or it needs, the skirting around or whatever it needs to be done. We were more than happy to do that. We'd be more than happy to do that.
Thank you.
May I add one more thing? Because on item 49, there was it was a discussion about doing an audit, and I know, and I just didn't want this hanging out there for people watching in the audience. We were provided with, I think, something like 150 pages worth of bills and invoices and things like that. So we got to the penny where all this money went.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Angus, the amount that was provided was exceeding $250,000. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the reason we structure it this way is to use $1 to give us $3 in return. The county, when they're advertising, they get full retail plus some. You have a long list of items here that we are getting at cost, and the labor portion of it is basically in-kind contribution. So with the $250,000 that we are thankful that we got from the Mojave County, I'm promising you that we did about $1 million worth of work in that, and you can come over and take a look at it. I mean, we have the largest dog park in the state of Arizona, 4 acre. and divided to two parts for the small dogs and large dogs. You know, before that, people from Golden Shores, from Topak, from Mojave Valley, Fort Mojave, they had to travel for 45 minutes an hour to go to Bullhead City for a dog park. Yeah, here it is a dog park that is being used by the community very well. So I'm saying that, you know, I hope and I wish we would be able to come together, just like what we've done in our community, to be able to work together to succeed, instead of, you know, being, you know, to try to obstruct.
And I guess that's the receipts that Supervisor Angus is referring to is what got my curiosity too in there, because we'd had an agreement with the nonprofit, but checks were going out to individuals. And so that was one of the reasons, just to have the attorneys go over and everybody go over, you know, bring something to us to say, yes, we spent $250,000 and this was all done according, you know, legally.
I'll go back to my recommendation. I would accept a motion for item 48, 49, and 50 to be tabled for up to a month for parties to address and answer all these questions, and then bring back at that time.
Mr. Chairman?
Would that be acceptable? Mr. Ayler?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Dan Ayler, and I believe that we had submitted a request to speak on this item before any action were taken. May I proceed?
Certainly.
My name is Dan Ayler. I live in Bullhead City, 2759 Camino del Rio. We are I believe, significant stakeholder in this particular project. I am here on behalf of the Legacy Foundation. Legacy Foundation is one of, if not close to the largest, public charity in the state of Arizona. And on this particular project, we have invested $495,000. That $495,000 has been paid off in various segments, if you would. The last contribution of which, I believe, or payment of which, was delivered in August, just basically a month and a few days ago. So we certainly have an interest in what's happening on this. And I totally concur with Mr. Hendricks that perhaps a little history is necessary. Over the weekend, I dug back through some of my records. In 1974, January and February of 1974, I was appointed by the then 3 supervisors of Mojave County to serve on the Mojave County Parks Commission, and served in that capacity and for a period of time as its chairman for the following decade plus, when it was ultimately disbanded. But as a member of the Parks Commission in the 1970s, I can tell you that we spent an incredible amount of time attempting to get a park in Mojave Valley, to get the land dedication. I went to Gordon McKellips, who was one of the original developers down there, and several others. Unfortunately, for that 10 or 12-year period, we were unsuccessful in getting a reasonable piece of ground that the county could afford. That changed, and changed dramatically. Unfortunately, it took 40 years to do it, but when the Sherrill family offered the current park, fortunately we had both a private partner relationship to get that land developed. And I can tell you on behalf of our foundation that one of the most important things to the Legacy Foundation is that any project that we fund is shown to be a sustainable project. One of the things that we required in this regard was the interim agreement with the high school district as far as initial maintenance of the property. Again, we're into this almost $500,000. Every one of our grants were issued on the basis of at least a dollar per dollar contribution from outside entities, exclusive of the Board of Supervisors. If I could just have another moment or two. That agreement that Mike is talking about was and is in effect. But the intention there, and certainly what we were led to believe, my conversations with Mr. Hendricks, if at no other location about this, was at the dedication that he and I attended when the county $250,000 was delivered, and the second of our 3 grants were delivered at the same time down at the park. And that is that ultimately, once the facility was substantially complete, through donations of third parties, that indeed the county would take over. And I would remind each of you who perhaps weren't here 45 years ago that we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in the tenure I had with the Mojave County Parks Commission on Sarah Park. I've got a newspaper article when Sarah Park first opened that I found this weekend. Back in 1974, the efforts that this Board of Supervisors made on Sarah Park, Mr. Johnson, was astronomical. The hundreds of thousands of dollars that the county taxpayers paid for not only Sarah Park, at the time we weren't incorporated in Bullhead City, on Bullhead Community Park, on the park at Dolan Springs, a park in Truxton, a park in Topak, a park in Golden Valley. We spent tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars on the larger 3 parks. The Neil Butler Park, I believe, was the 3rd large one besides the Wallapai Park. So I would remind you, this is not probably an issue today, but it will be an issue in the near future, that this facility is a needed facility, and it has been built substantially through contributions, not the burden of the regular taxpayer or of this facility or the Board of Supervisors. But I'll tell you, and I cannot emphasize strongly enough, the chilling effect that your action, if at some point in the future, is to deny the maintenance of this park, the chilling effect it will have on the Legacy Foundation. To give you a bit of refreshed memory, we have expended about $5 million in efforts that have helped every part of this county, every single part. We've spent, $1.7 million in the Topak, Golden Shores, Oatman areas. So I think every one of you folks ought to be familiar with and realize the effort that Mr. Azami and the Sherrill family have made, and the 50, 60, perhaps 100 businesses from that district that have contributed to the incredible success of this park. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eder. Thank you, Mr. Armani.
Thank you.
Mr. Fry, did you want to add anything? Let's see if we can get some conclusion here. I have 2 other people that would like to speak to the item. Armand Strange and Michael Boone.
I'm in Stange, 4321 South Cavalry Road, Fort Mojave. As far as I understood with the park, it was supposed to be only from the public donations built and not from the county. And I have to agree with Buster Johnson on that. And then the other question I have, when the park is all done, who is going to go and patrol the park? We have the Bullhead City Community Park, and what you read in the paper, there's people sleeping in the park after hours, they get arrested. There's drugs, alcohol, everything in the park. Who is taking care of that problem? We don't have enough deputies to take care of the problem. So is the school district then going to provide the people to patrol the park? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Strange. Michael Boone?
(2210) Palo Verde North, Lake Havasu City. I've sat here and listened to most of this as kind of an objective person because I didn't know when all this stuff started. But what is seemingly real obvious moving forward is the fact that half of these agenda items, including this one, don't have a real clear understanding of the public of what you're doing. You don't even understand what was done at different Board of Supervisor meetings, and it becomes this big debacle. And what I might suggest is you have your county attorney go back and rewrite some of this stuff so it's easy to be understood by the public, easy to be understood by you, and your resolutions have some meat to them. Because right now, what I saw from the audience going on, some people knew, some people didn't knew. You know, Mr. Johnson had what he thought was a clear understanding, which was different from somebody else's understanding. And, you know, you took a trailer in that benefited Mr. Zuri, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, because he admitted that was his, so the tax write-off was his. So, I mean, all this stuff is going around like a gigantic ball, and it needs to at some point come to a stop, and the county attorney needs to step in and start writing these things so they make sense, and so the public understands it. And then you wouldn't have this perception of a bunch of people that are arguing with each other nonstop. And the taxpayers wouldn't be down here beating you up every 5 minutes. At least I wouldn't. You'd probably like that in itself. But it's sitting back there, I was amazed. It was just amazing that nobody seemed to know what the person sitting next to him knew.
Thank you, Mr. Boone. Ryan Ortiz?
Royanne Ortiz, 1550 Monte Vista Drive. I just wanted to say that I absolutely support this park and what it does for the communities there in Fort Mojave and Mojave Valley. I think it's very important, and I'm very impressed with that community over there and the volunteerism that they've generated and the donations that they've generated. And hopefully, maybe in the future, if someone wants to complain about it, they can do a little bit better research. Thank you.
Mr. Ortiz? Okay, there's been reluctance to work with all three items, so we'll go with one at a time. Item number 48, discussion, possible action, the donation of the 1994 Capco mobile trailer. Chair would entertain a motion.
I think we've already voted on 48.
Yeah, we did.
Oh, defeated. So you want to do
Yeah,
that?
we had a
Okay.
motion and a second that was defeated. However, there has been no action at this point.
Great, thank you.
No action to this point, so I'm bringing it back. And it appears
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I guess I could make a motion that the county, if we have taken possession of the 1994 Cavco mobile home, that we get the keys, that we get insurance, and we get it put under county control. Direct staff do that because it hasn't been done up till now.
Okay, we have a motion then to accept.
And
Supervisor.
just add, the motion that was approved by the board previously was to accept the donation and to utilize it at the park. So we don't maintain the park. To be utilized at the park, it would be utilized similar to how it's being utilized today by the school district that's maintaining the facility. That's, the motion actually said to be utilized at the Mojave Valley Park.
So do we need a motion? Another motion?
I guess that'd be either that or we have to bring the whole thing back for reconsideration, because obviously we shouldn't have, at some point with the backup, we shouldn't have said we're going to give it away without giving it away.
Right, okay.
I don't know how you want to address that to do it, but.
So I don't believe we have a second.
There's no second.
Okay. Dies for, item dies for lack of a second.
Yes.
Item number 49, a discussion possible action for the audit of $250,000 spent on Mojave Valley, Fort Mojave Community Park. Chair would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion to bring back the accounting to the board at I don't know, meeting 30 days from now. The auditing of the receipts that went in.
I need clarification, because we already got it. So what kind of further information do you want?
If we look at the agreement was with the nonprofit. It's my understanding the checks were made out to people other than the nonprofit.
So you want a legal opinion, pretty
Basically to
much?
see, and it was also my understanding, and through that Freedom of Information request that was made, I saw where we never actually physically saw the improvements that were done. I just need clarification that we paid out things that we know were done.
Okay, I see no harm in clarification. I'll second your motion.
Okay, we have motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Does this mean we all take a road trip down to the park to check out the park?
I think it's fair if a supervisor asks to see how money is spent that we agreed on. I think it's fair that we get that to any of us our satisfaction.
Well, and the Supervisor Angus, it's like the Cavco trailer, it's a liability issue. If the board does decide to take over the park, and we've had this in the past with improvement districts where the board never saw the improvements or approved the improvements that were done, we accepted it, and now the things that were put in weren't to standards, and it cost us more money in the future. That's the only thing I'm doing. It's just to protect the taxpayers from money.
Okay.
That's all it is.
I think Supervisor Johnson is trying to
Okay.
provide some caution there. Any further discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion carried. Item number 50, discussion, possible action for the approval or denial of the park development agreement with Mojave Valley, the Fort Mojave Community Park, and an update on the current status of the intergovernmental agreement with the Colorado Union High School District for the operation and maintenance of Mojave Valley Fort Mojave Community Park.
I guess, Mr. Chairman, my question comes down to now, from what we're hearing, I don't know, I guess the attorneys would have to give us an opinion. When does this come back for the acceptance by the county? This is a never-ending, because we had two things. One person said when it's substantially done, another person said when it is done, or I was kind of heard two different things.
If I may, I was looking over the IGA. I looked at it last week and looking over it today. Looked at the two. There was the one, the IGA with the school district, and then there was the agreement with the committee itself. The agreement that was signed by the committee was upon completion of proposed improvements or within 12 months of the execution of this agreement, whichever is first, MVP agrees to lease the subject property to Mojave County for park and recreational purposes. So I think it's a good idea on Supervisor Johnson's part to at least look at it to determine whether we are ready to do it at this time or not. I would not recommend to accept it today or deny it today, either matter. It should be something that should be looked at to determine whether we are ready to do it, whether the IGA would allow us to do that, whether the contract would allow us to do that, or maybe there needs more time. I just think that we ought to look into that and make that determination, and I'd be happy to review that with anybody who wants to review it with me.
That's great. We have the same number of people that would like to speak to that item.
May I make one extra comment? Mr. Boone made a good point. He said, to everybody, it looks like we don't know what's going on, but there's a little element missing. The supervisor who really moved this forward, Supervisor Moss, is no longer here. And I think he's sort of the missing piece in all of this. And so I do think it's a good idea that we clarify all of this. There's nothing wrong with it, and so everybody understands it, and that we're all on the same page, because I know I've learned some things I didn't know. Can't know everything about everything, so it's always good to talk about these things.
But once again, can I have all the supervisors have a copy of April 6, 2015 for that motion? Because I read it because I was not here. And there's some things that I gleaned from this discussion about item 53 that we're revisiting again, that, and I will check with County Attorney once more to make sure I'm gleaning the right information out of this, but I think a lot of the things have been discussed in terms of ownership of the park and things like this in the discussion during that meeting.
I will email those out to the board. However, they are always available 24 hours a day on our website to not only the board, but the public as well.
And Chairman Watson, let me just add with all the other comments from the other supervisors, it's good that we're discussing this in public, because otherwise would be breaking the open meeting laws and would all be in trouble. So there's some things that have to be discussed in public, and even though it seems like maybe we don't know what we're doing, it's a matter of communicating legally the way that we have to do by law.
Thank you.
Also, Chairman, one other thing I would add as well with Supervisor Wakimoto's suggestion, I believe you said April 6, 2015. You should also, the board should also look at the February 4th, 2013 minutes as well, because this has been brought back on 2 different occasions, February 4th, 2013, as well as April 6, 2015.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, is that 12-month period up you were referring to?
Yeah, it is. And that's why I want to look into this. I think this is things that we should talk about and figure out, and I'll try my best to come to a conclusion or some kind of recommendation for the board.
Right, so we should have something like that, little things, not just this, but all stuff that has a particular file where it comes back to us without getting out of it. And then I would rather have it discussed at a board meeting so that each of us gets the same information and not 5 of us talking to the county attorney.
Very good. Chair would entertain a motion.
I don't have a very good track record, so. Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion to refer this to staff to have them bring back within a 30-day period, or the next meeting, which is 30 days away, regarding the park development agreement.
We have a motion? Bring back in 30 days?
I'll second it.
And a second? Before I call for questions, I'm going to ask anyone wishing to speak to this item. Mr. Amani? Mr. Ayler? Mr. Fry? Thank you very much. Okay, there being no further questions, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion to carry. Gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. All right, going back to item number 34, which would be the public hearings. Open the public hearing for the discussion, possible action for the adoption of resolution number 2017-123. Mr. Lotowski.
Good morning, Chairman Watson, members of the board. This item concerns a public petition to Mojave County to accept a 1-mile segment of Cali Lucero extending from Avenida Obregon east for acceptance into the county's regular road maintenance program to be maintained as an unsurfaced road. The Board of Supervisors previously accepted and designated this section from Stockton Hill Road to Avenida Obregon into its regular road maintenance program approximately a couple of years previously. That section had been under tertiary and then reverted to regular maintenance. So this particular item contemplates extending that 1 additional mile further east.
Thank you, Mr. Potowski. This is in my district, and I would highly recommend that we do accept it. At this point, are there any other people that would like to speak to item number 34 before we close the public hearing?
No, there's a gentleman.
Number Bill Merriweather.
Greetings, Supervisor Watson and fellow supervisors. My name is Bill Merriweather. I live at 9370 Avianda, Obregon. And I'm here to ask you to accept the east portion of Cali Lucero into your county roads regular maintenance program. There's approximately 50 households that live out there, so it's like a little town almost. And the road, we brought the road up to specs, and they've been inspected and everything. And I'll make it short and sweet. We're just asking you for your help to do what I just mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Merriweather. Okay, that's the only other person that I had signed up to speak to item number 34.
Chairman Watson, I'll make a motion to approve resolution.
I need to close the public hearing. Close the public hearing for item number 34. Now we can.
Move to adopt resolution number 2017-123 to accept this 1 mile section of Cali Lucero into the regular road maintenance program.
We have a motion? And a second? Any further discussion? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. On to item number 35, open the public hearing for the discussion, possible action for the adoption of Board of Supervisors Resolution 2017-118, special use permit. Mr. Walsh.
Chairman Watson, members of the board, this public hearing item is for a special use permit to allow for an accessory residence greater than 50% of the primary residence in an AR agricultural residential zone in the South Mojave Valley area, east of State Highway 95 and north of Laguna Road. The Planning and Zoning Commission heard this and approved the recommendation unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. I have one person wishing to speak to item number 35, Mr. Robinson.
Chairman Watson, I made a mistake. I meant to write 36 down on the form, but for the record, I support this, but I would like to speak to item 36.
Okay, close the public hearing for item number 35. And Chair would entertain a motion. This is in District number 5, I believe.
It is.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any further discussion? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Item number 36, open the public hearing for the discussion, possible action for the adoption of Mojave County Ordinance 2017-04, setting forth an amendment to the Mojave County Ordinance 2017-02 to remove the building permit fee schedule in conflict with the current approved fees. I have one person signed up mistakenly to speak to the item, so Mr. Robinson, I will give you that
Stephen Robinson, 3439 North Bowie Road, Golden Valley. I oppose changing this because there is a clear conflict in the motion. Is first off, it has two different rate schedules, the old one and the new one. I want to say first off that this original 1702 was supposed to have, according to the resolution, was supposed to have been heard back in June 19th. Instead, it was postponed till August 7th, the worst possible time. And that was unfortunate that it was, delayed and then suddenly pushed onto the biggest agenda in the counties in 4 years with the county. Secondly, building inspection is very much like, and in fact, in some municipalities and other governments, it's considered a enterprise fund, a fund that is supposed to act like a business, match expenses with revenues so that they are covered. And over the past 15 years, in a column I wrote in Friday's paper, this department, or this division, Building and Inspection, has more than met their expenses for the vast majority of that time. From 2002 to 2007, it was close to, if not over, $500,000 based upon your own approved budgets. And so it did not fail to meet the 60%. It was meeting it. In fact, in 2 of those years, it had a $500,000 surplus. In 2017, the year just finished, according to the budget that was approved on August 7th, their expenditures was $1,118,000 with revenues of $1,167,000. So without the approved fee increases on August 7th, it was already meeting its expenses. The expenditures have never, so basically, based on that information, when you look at what these fee increases will do, it will hurt builders in the rural part of the county, in the unincorporated part of the county. If you're covering the expenses as they are now, then there is no need for approving this motion. And in fact, because it's on the agenda to have reconsideration, I would recommend that you oppose this motion if you plan to support reconsideration. We'll see. Thank you.
Okay. Close the public hearing for item number 36.
And Mr. Chairman, may I provide just a little clarification?
Certainly.
This isn't, even though there's not 2 items later on regarding fees and reconsideration, this particular item is not regarding fees. The fees were previously approved. This particular item is correcting the ordinance so that the numbers match the approved fees. Thank you.
Motion approved.
Second.
And
Second.
And a second? Motion and a second. Any further discussion? There being done, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. Now on to the regular agenda, item number 37. Mr. Lotowski?
Chairman Watson, members of the board, this item concerns the abandonment of Joshua Tree Road. This item concerns the abandonment of Joshua Tree Road in the Beaver Dam area of the Arizona Strip. Mojave County does not maintain this roadway, and what transpired is the owner of approximately 5 lots by which this roadway abuts has taken sole possession of all 5 lots. So this owner desires to abandon the roadway for purposes of further developing or assuming other plans for the properties that he does hold. Mojave County Public Works went through the requisite state statute guidelines for processing this abandonment, and found that there is no objection by neither the abutting residents, namely the property owner that owns these properties, as well as any servicing utilities. So Public Works does recommend approval of this item.
Thank you, Mr. Letowski.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Question?
Mr. Lachowski, on the property, is it still split into 5 parcels?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Johnson, yes.
The only problem I would have with the board would be if the gentleman changes it to back to 1 parcel or whatever, but if you have 5 parcels and he does away with access, it could still be sold at some other time with no access. That'd be my only, even though he owns it all at once right now.
Right. I can see that as concern. Any further questions? I appreciate your concern, Supervisor Johnson. This is in my district, and I'll make a motion for acceptance.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried. Item number 38, discussion, possible action, consultation with the attorney of a public body pursuant to Arizona Revised Statutes 38-43103 to consider and discuss a request of waiver of conflict of interest involving Triple G Partnership versus Mojave County, and including Cheryl Sweeney and Riley Carlock and Applewhite's representation of Mojave County on water issues.
Without going into, Chairman Watson, if I may, without going into what was discussed during executive session, I'd be asking that one of the supervisors make a motion to waive the conflict according to what we've outlined in the agenda.
I'll make motion to waive the conflict as discussed.
I'll second it.
A motion and a second for the waiver with Triple G Partnership and the Cheryl Sweeney's firm of Riley, Carlock, and Applewhite. Any further discussion? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. Discussion, item number 39, discussion, possible action for the adoption of policy 2-03 or any changes thereto regarding the Board of Supervisors' email communication that ensures compliance with open meeting laws.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. Item number 40, sitting as the Board of Directors, the Mojave County Library District, discussion, possible action regarding the future funding of Mojave County Library services and locations. This board addressed it at the last meeting at August 21st, 2017. Mr. Hendricks, you want to fill us in on any progress that we've made?
Mr. Chairman, in your backup information, our library director, Kathy Pinnell, has provided a proposal to actually look at some significant reductions in monies being spent in the library, and I've asked her to be available if the board has any questions. Regarding services, I believe that's a board decision, so, and that should be subject to board discussion if you wanted to take a look at options on locations and additions or reductions in services. But if Kathy would come up and answer any questions that you all may have regarding what she has submitted as your backup information, or have any other questions that you may wish to provide.
Thank you. Good morning, Ms. Purnell.
Good morning.
Any questions for, we'll start on the left.
No, I have none.
Supervisor Bishop.
Good morning, Kathy. I wanted to thank you for the work that you put into this. You've got some excellent recommendations, and I wish we would have approved to return the 10 cents to the library district, but since we did not, I certainly appreciate you taking a fine-tooth comb and figuring out where we can save some money so that we don't have to close down any of our remote libraries. And I think that's very important to every district represented here today. So I just wanted to say thank you, and I would approve every one of your recommendations, and wanted to know whether or not you had any ideas of where to relocate the Fort Mojave Library.
Really, we have not done any in-depth, because of course that will have to be done through our procurement department to follow all of those rules. So, you know, if that's a recommendation that the board approves of, then we will go out and see if there is anything that would be of any savings, because we do have to keep in mind that probably almost anywhere that we move to will need some tenant improvements, and that takes money that we may or may not have at this point.
And I'm assuming the location where it was before it was moved to where it is probably no longer available.
It's no longer available.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Angus. Supervisor Wakamoto.
I just have a letter, but.
Certainly.
Okay, this is, and this is still addressed, and it's from Linda Bean. It says the community of Topok needs a library. It is at least 30 miles from the nearest library. Many of the citizens are unable to drive far. Many can't drive at all. They all try to stay active, and the library helps them do that. And this was just a letter that was sent to me because they could not make this, but thank you for your effort.
Thank you, Ms. Purnell. You come up with some excellent solutions to this. Really appreciate it.
Well, I hope we don't have to go with all of them.
Correct.
Mr. Chairman, is there any that concerns you that you, Kathy, would like to have the board further discuss?
Well, the only one that is truly a recommendation. I mean, the others, I had been asked, if we did this, what could we save? If we did that, what could we save? The only one that I truly recommend is the first one, that because they are positions that are vacant, we have streamlined, we can get by without them. So anything beyond that, you know, is certainly up to you, but I'm.
And Mr. Chairman, you know, I just wanted to emphasize that her major cost-cutting recommendations are to reduce the hours of the libraries. That's what it appears. So you're significantly asking the board whether they want to reduce the hours at the Kingman, Bullhead City, and Lake Havasu Library, and that would
Well, that's
generate.
one of my last ones.
Yes.
I'm hoping that's not it, but whatever it is, we will make it work.
Thank you.
We have a number of folks that would like to speak to the issue. Kathy, if you'll remain up front, please have a seat, but remain up front to ask questions. Michael Boone.
(2210) Palo Verde North, Lake Havasu City. It was impressive to see this lady come up here and start telling you how she can cut her budget when other departments are just hitting their hand out and saying, give me the money for free. Libraries are cornerstone, like community parks are, to the criminal justice system on juveniles. And seniors that get shut in and don't have access to libraries is even a huger problem. So you can have all the compassion for all these other programs, But you need to look at the library program and try to keep that intact, because they are providing a service. They're providing a place for these kids to go to instead of hanging out committing crime. Parks are doing the same thing. So I wish you would look at the library system with as much zeal as you're looking at the parks, because they're correlated and they are proven reduction to criminal activity, which the Strapp Sheriff's Department should appreciate.
Leon Hoagland Smith.
Leanne Hoagland Smith, 3981 South Centennial Road, Golden Valley. Regarding this item, hopefully the board will recognize rural citizens need access to rural libraries beyond the bookmobile. Free Wi-Fi is critical for many young people to complete their homework. In Golden Valley, there's currently a waiting list for Wi-Fi accounts, and in some places there is no internet availability. Again, I heard asking Golden Valley parents and high school students and retired adults to drive a highway with 1 fatality per quarter and another with 1.5 fatalities per quarter ignores the stated mission adopted by this board. And I quote, with a focus on the last 11 words, "The mission of Mojave County is to serve its citizens through the efficient management of resources and through promotion of cooperation among communities in a visionary manner that enhances the lives of all those served." Thank you.
Thank you. Armin Strauss. Okay. Wayne Hollins.
Wade Holland, 4825 North Mormon Flat Road, Golden Valley. I get confused thinking about this situation. We have money in a building fund that we're not building anything yet, but we have ideas to take some of that money and put it in something else that doesn't have nothing to do with libraries because it's there, but yet at Golden Valley, and I hear Meadview and what have you, we're only open 15 hours a week to begin with. I'm not even sure what they are because I can never make it there when they're there. So 15 hours, you got to be kidding me. We have a library for the people, but no hours for the people to go to the library. So if we have money that is in a library fund, regardless of what it's for, and it's not being used for that yet, why can't we have the library open 40 hours a week like any other general business in the world? 40 hours is a standard work week. I know we have volunteers. We could probably get more volunteers. And it's not just what you can do, because I think, again, the people have to be part of the solution too. But 15 hours? Are you kidding me? Let's spend the money for what it's for. I just get exasperated with, this is a service that we are taxed on, so why don't we have all the services that we're paying for? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holland. Chris Solinsky.
Hello. My name is Chris Solinsky. I live at 3555 North Sandy Point Drive, Meadview. First of all, with the help of our businesses in Meadview, we collected over 333 signatures from the community of the people who want to keep our library open, and I'd like to submit these signatures to the board. Can I just give them to Jean? And I thank Jean Bishop for coming out and seeing our library and supporting us also. If I had more time, I'm sure we could have collected even more signatures. Recently, more people have been moving into Meadview, and one of the reasons they moved here was because they have children and found out that we have a library. To reiterate what our president of Friends of the Library, Nancy Hussey, said last time, our Friends group and the Meadview community raised $43,000 that it took to build our meeting room only 2 years ago. And Mojave County Library District only pays the Meadview Civic Association $1 a year to lease the land for our library. Many people, as you've already heard, still do not have a computer, especially where we live, and they rely on the internet at the library, or students bring their laptops to study in front of the library when it isn't even open. So the other thing I'd like to say is that it is a hardship also because we only live 65 miles one way, and what this other lady said about traffic, we have the buses going up to the Skywalk back and forth. It's really becoming a hazard to even get to Kingman many times. So please consider these things when you make your decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Kath, I've got a couple questions for you. I believe when we were visiting just last week or the week before, you indicated that there was some possible vacancies that you had that you didn't need to fill.
Right.
Probably move, and that was a savings of, I believe it was almost $100,000. if
Right,
not
it's
close to
the
it.
first one on my list here. It's about $90,000.
$90,000. I know you're doing everything possible to keep our libraries open and accessible to all our constituents, and it's important, especially in the rural areas that we represent.
Yes.
That's really their only linkage to the outside. And so with that, I certainly want to say thank you for all the possible scenarios that you've run through there. I know you gave them a lot of thought. One that I would be in favor of is of course, your number one item, and that would be the vacant positions.
Correct.
So with that, I'll make a motion to accept your recommendation for just the vacant positions as far as the cost savings for the library district.
Second the motion.
And we have a second. I'll check with the clerk to see if she has it. Okay. Any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Johnson.
Thank you. I voted for a tax increase on this so that we would, and with the idea that we would look at some cost savings, not just getting rid of employee hours. We have a tremendous amount of libraries that we can't afford. We have a redundancy with the bookmobile, and we're not going to address any of those. We're just looking at employee reduction. That wasn't anything I ever envisioned. That's all I have to say.
Chairman Watson, I would like to discuss each bullet item that Kathy
Certainly.
has recommended. And I also agree with the first one, that is quite a cost savings. But also reducing the library in the Fort Mojave area. If we can find a smaller location, I think Supervisor Wakamoto would be in support of finding a different and smaller location, which could benefit the residents down there. So I'd like to hear Supervisor Wakamoto, her comments on that. The next item is to discontinue the bookmobile service to Scenic and Beaver Dam. That was a $6,800 savings, and I believe, Kathy, were you not going to contact Clark County and see if those citizens up there that are served by this visit by the bookmobile could use their library? Did you make that contact?
I did. Currently, their policies do allow for guest passes, which have to be renewed every 3 months, as long as there are no fines or outstanding fees. They are looking at changing that policy probably by the end of the year. And the figure that they're discussing is far beyond anything that we could ever even try to, make small contribution to do that. I did finally, after a couple of weeks, I was able to get a hold of their director, who said he will discuss that with his staff. So it's not dead, but we just at this point can't know for sure that our people would be able to use theirs without a large fee.
Okay. All right, and I don't have any feelings either way on that. It's a small savings, so. Going on to the next one, the elimination of the smaller bookmobile. I am interested in that. We have 2 bookmobiles. This smaller one that we could eliminate altogether, and then we have a larger one. So what would the elimination of the smaller bookmobile, what effect would that have on our county?
As far as the savings, the biggest savings would be in not having to replace that vehicle when it's reached its useful life. Because the staff that works on that, it's only about a 4-day-a-month operation, so they have lots of other duties. It isn't that we could reduce staff because of that.
Okay, is this something that you feel strongly about that we keep, or is this just because we already had the vehicle, we're using it because the larger one is?
Well, this is the one that serves the nursing homes, those kinds of things. So, it's a little difficult to say we want to serve the outlying areas, but this is a service that we've given to nursing homes and people who cannot get to a library, and then all of a sudden say, in essence, you're not important. So again, for the cost, at least for the initial cost, I'm not sure that it's something that is worth stirring the hornet's nest. But in the end, when it is time to replace that vehicle, it's not a cheap vehicle.
So we could revisit that when it's time for replacement?
If you'd like.
Okay. And then reducing the hours at the 3 main library branches. Mr. Hollins brought up a good point. The remote libraries are only open 15 hours. Of course, the population it serves is not very large in comparison, but the remote libraries with their limited hours, and the 3 large libraries are opened late into the evenings from 56 hours, 5-6 days a week. I mean, I'm thinking we could reduce that and still have good service to our cities, but I'd like to hear your input on that.
Well, again, I would like to hear your input on that. Could we do it? We couldn't do it. It's just typically once you reduce them, and they never come back. So
would that be a bad thing?
Well, and again, that's certainly up to the level of service that you all want us to provide.
If the libraries were 40 hours a week, the staff would then work a normal 40-hour work week. You'd save on employees, save on utilities, but I don't know if that cost is stirring the hornet's nest, as you said, is
Well, it certainly is one of the things in general, because they are open 40 hours a week, and we do pay employees for 40 hours a week in compared to what we pay community libraries for the small number of hours. It certainly saves more total dollars. Excuse me.
Okay, well, I certainly would support the first 3 items on your list. I really appreciate that. I wouldn't have any heartburn for reducing the hours at the main libraries either, if it's going to get us where we need to be financially without raising taxes. And I don't think anybody in this room wants to see us raise taxes, but I would like to hear from Supervisor Wakamoto on her library down there in Fort Mojave.
I think the Fort Mojave Library needs to stay. I believe that if we move the location, because right now the location is in a bad spot with the school that's right there. It's not conducive to people that are using it. I believe if we go to a smaller venue that would keep it open and service the people in the area, I'd be okay with that being so that we could come back as the population grows to see what is needed in that area. But I believe the people deserve, and I'm willing to work with you in terms of keeping that open, because there are many people here that use it for a variety of reasons. And as long as we can continue to service the people that need it, I'm okay with going to a smaller venue.
And number of hours?
The number of hours, I'm sorry, I can't remember you.
Well, they're currently at 40. When we moved to that location, it went from 15 hours a week to 40 hours a week. So the other community libraries have shorter hours. That's the only community library that really has full-time hours.
I really kind of I'd like to work with you on the hours in terms of staggering it because of the community and the way the population works and stuff. If we can stagger the hours to see that we continue to service people that have not conventional 8-to-5 jobs, is my concern with that area, because because of the population. You know, if we can work on the hours together and continue to service the community as it needs to be serviced.
I'm sure that can be worked out.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second. Any further
What is the
discussion?
motion for, Mr. Chairman?
The motion is to act on recommendation number 1, vacating the positions, I believe. That is the answer.
Yes, sir, it was to accept the recommendation of number 1 on the list.
And all the rest of this talk was just talk?
I think we could address them as time goes on. I don't know why we can't bring it back.
So we could make another motion after your motion is approved, or?
If it's approved, or it may not be approved.
Okay.
That was the only question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think what Supervisor Johnson's alluding to, when we voted on our August 7th meeting, and it's burned into my brain, we went back and forth on the library, and I think it was agreed on that we would bring back suggestions to close outlying libraries. And I'm not saying if I'm for or against, I'm just saying that that's what I thought we were going to be talking about. That's all.
Any further discussion? There being none, those
Are
in favor?
you open to amending your motion to include more of what we discussed? Such as the Fort Mojave Library?
You have a motion and second.
I think she has the latitude to work with the library director for moving the library. Wouldn't that be correct?
What you could do is the library director can speak with Supervisor Wakimoto and see if they can come up with a proposal and then bring it back to the board for the board's final determination. If that's what you want to do, they can do that. Any supervisor could do that with any department head and then bring back later and say, well, this is what I would like to propose.
Certainly.
And Mr. Chairman, you can also act on each recommendation one at a time if you so chose.
All right.
You could do that as well.
We could do that also.
Well, Mr. Chairman, then if we're going to get into that, I have one question of the library director. How much money did you spend on the remodeling of that new library?
47,000?
47
For the
is
tenant improvements. The tenant improvements were $47,000.
47,000
And we've
total.
been paying that back to the owner who we lease to. That will be paid off the end of March. So we'll just have paid that off.
So it was $47,000 total. All right, thank you. That's all.
Okay. We have a motion second. Questions? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. We can act,
Okay,
continue to act under this item, I believe, can we
If you
not?
would like to, you can, yes.
So,
Chairman Wakamoto, do you want to make a motion on the next item?
I'd like to make a motion that I work with the library department to see what we can do to continue to service the people in my district with the library and work out times and availability for the library.
Do we even need a motion for that?
No, you don't.
No.
And that's what we were talking about, is what you could do is you can meet with the library director individually, see what kind of proposals, see what you can work out, and then if you want to bring something back to the board, then you can present that to the board at a different meeting.
Excuse me?
then you can bring it back on the
Okay,
agenda then,
then
if
we
you'd
don't
like.
need it
Yeah, you don't
now.
really need a motion now.
Okay, then, all right, that's fine.
Yes, I think, Mr. Chairman, going back, I think we got a little far afield. Previous board had put in the bookmobile so that we didn't have to have rural libraries, and we were going to close down the rural libraries. This is quite a few years ago. We shut down the Oatman one, and that's where we're at today. We got away from that, from what that board's direction was, and now we're adding more libraries. So I think that's where we're at, and the same thing Supervisor Angus is. Either decide we're going to continue to spend money that we don't have, or we cut back, one or the other. And while I appreciate Supervisor Bishop's idea of cutting the hours in the cities, we are paying for those rural libraries that you people have out there, so we'd like to keep our hours that we pay for.
Okay, would it be your recommendation then that we eliminate the bookmobile? The smaller bookmobile?
Well, we put it in because it was a cost savings to the district to have the bookmobile go out and provide it to more people. Now we have people that are, you hear a lot of, oh, it's our only internet, oh, it's our all these other things that they have. We're so far from town, but people chose to live in those locations. They still go to the store, they still go to the doctor, they still go to all these places. My thing would be to close the libraries down and keep the bookmobile. It seems like, unless we had reevaluated the director to see if that was a better service, but one or the other. I mean, if we close down the bookmobiles, I'm fine. It just seems a redundancy that we have, because I can tell you it's going to be harder pressed on a tax increase this next time for the libraries.
Oh, I'm sure, I'm sure. And I'm trying to work with you on this, too. We've looked at the possibility of reducing service up in my district in the North Country. And we've looked at reducing the service up in the Beaver Dam, Littlefield area. And I'm certainly willing to look at that some more. But that's only cures a portion of the problem, because it still is required for White Hills and Dolan Springs. Is that correct?
It is, and if I may make another comment, if for some reason the rurals were closed and we started taking the bookmobile out there, what we currently have would not be adequate to, both in equipment and in staffing, to now put all of the rural areas on that route. And then we're only talking about physical materials. We're not talking about any kind of internet, wireless, any kind of that access. So,
right. Thank you. But I'm certainly willing to continue to look at this and ways of saving money on the district.
Chairman Watson, based on the information that Kathy provided, in regards to the smaller bookmobile, she states that if these services were curtailed, that we have the library cards available for facilities using those with the limited access to library. And eligible facilities would include the retirement homes, nursing home, preschools, daycare centers, et cetera. And facility staff would be able to visit their local library and check out items for their residents and students. So with that information, I would make a motion that we eliminate the services of just our smaller bookmobile, and when the maximum mileage is reached, that we do not replace that bookmobile. So keep the bookmobile until the mileage is up where we need to replace it, and that would end those services at that time. That would be my motion.
Reasonable?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Could we get what's the cost savings on that?
I'm not sure how much I can't tell you how much the bookmobile was. Stella, do you remember how much that bookmobile cost? About $100,000 to replace that when it's time.
And that whole program of the bookmobile to the rural area, is the only place it goes.
No, this isn't the rural areas. This is the bookmobile that goes to Kingman, to Lake Havasu, to Bullhead City, to the nursing homes. Yes.
So we're just going to get rid of the one that goes to the nursing homes, not the one that goes to the outlying areas? Yeah, see, I have a problem with that. Now, you've got libraries in those areas. Now you've got a bookmobile in those areas, but
Supervisor Johnson, we don't take our bookmobiles to Chloride. We don't take our bookmobile to Meadview. We don't take our bookmobile to Golden Shores, where we have those facilities. We're not doing those services. Could we? Yes. But again, if we start doing that, we are going to need something to get us there. The ones we have now, we're taking to the locations that have nothing, the big bookmobile.
So the idea is, though, that no matter where you are, if you decide to live in the wildest place in Mojave County, we should bring you library services, and the main city should pay for all this.
Supervisor, that is certainly up to the board.
That's what we're getting.
May I ask a question? Supervisor Bishop, do you think that maybe this is a little premature to talk about this? Because how much more do we have on that before you reach a maximum?
You remember? I would assume a couple more years anyway.
Yeah. Do you want to just, you still want to do it, or maybe?
Well, we brought this up so that we could save money, because we reinstated the library tax 5 cents when they needed 10 cents. So we're going to be digging into the building fund for the Kingman Library, which is being planned right now as we speak. So do we support the lack of library tax monies with the building fund and not build the Kingman extension, which has been planned for decades? Or do we go forward with what we discussed and try to figure out how to live within the financial realm of what we approved for the library? So that's what we're doing here today. And so maybe I could restate my motion saying that we just eliminate the smaller bookmobile as soon as possible. I'm just trying to save money is what I'm trying to do. Or we could eliminate some of the hours of the main city libraries, but that's where most of our tax monies come from, is those 3 major cities. So I don't think that's what I would like to see done, but it's something that's on the list that Kathy's recommended that we consider.
If you eliminated the bookmobile right now, what would the savings to the county be?
The smaller bookmobile?
Yes.
Right now, it's the wear and tear on the vehicle, fuel costs, because the staff that we have doing these, it only goes out 4 days a month.
So
And that staff does a lot of other things, so it isn't, typically it's the bookmobile itself and the staff time that are the costly items. I could not eliminate any additional staff other than those other 2 that have already been approved up here with that option.
So the savings would be minimal?
Until we have to replace that vehicle, yes.
And the savings from doing away with the bookmobile that travels to the places where there aren't libraries, how much would that savings be? I mean, roughly. You know.
Well, there's two people that are on that, so we've got, I don't know, maybe 50, 60,000 on staffing, and then I'm trying to remember exactly what we pay. The large bookmobile is a motor pool vehicle, so we do pay 39 cents a mile plus $75 a month plus on that.
And then we have per diem and all those things because we're
Excuse
gone.
me?
Don't we have per diem and those
Yes.
things because people are out
Yes.
traveling?
Well, the only one we have per diem on is when we're still going up to the Strip. The other ones we do not. They're out and in the same day.
So the motion that we have on the table is for the small bookmobile when it when it reaches its mileage, right? I want
It
to,
gives the communities and the nursing homes and the little daycare centers time to plan and know that this is going to be ending when that mileage is reached.
yeah, you know, can I retract my second? Because I'm not sure. I'm not comfortable yet. I'm not saying I'm not, but today I'm not comfortable doing that. And since we do have a little time, I'd like to just think and talk to people more, if that's okay.
So you're pulling your second?
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess in discussion with that, Mr. Chairman, I don't know why we're going to daycares and those sorts of places. Or,
Well, we aren't going to daycares.
Well, whatever
but
the
we're
children
available.
are.
I mean, it's available. The facilities cards allow daycares to have their activity director or whoever it is come in, and that's where it's mentioned in that. We're not going to daycares. We're going to assisted living, nursing homes, those kinds of things.
Okay.
We're going to, yeah, with the smaller one.
All right, because I think those in the major cities, we have those, the younger kids, I mean, well, it'd be nice to do it. I think it's something their parents should be doing. But the assisted living in those places, I have no problem with the bookmobiles going there. It's just, as long as we're not doing the little kids, I could care less about that.
Kathy, on your list, you don't mention the large bookmobile. Can you tell us about that one?
Well, this wasn't exhaustive. What I did was anything that somebody mentioned, you know, let's look at this, let's look at that, I did that. I did not go through every single service that we provide, and I apologize if that's what was expected. It's not, wasn't my
I'm
understanding.
just curious because the small bookmobile looks like the board's desire is for that to stay for now, so.
Yeah. The large bookmobile I had in my original backup material for the meeting of the 21st had given a list of the current places where we were going with that bookmobile stops. We were going to White Hills, Scenic, Beaver Dam School, Beaver Dam at the Fire Department, Cedar Hills School, Wickiup, Owens School, Valentine School, and Yucca. Those are the places that we're currently taking the large bookmobile.
And for your information, I'm working on Beaver Dam, the 3 locations there. Trying to get those people to see if they'd be interested in going into the Mesquite Library System, which they have a full range of opportunities there, from electronic to a vast library. So if I can pull that portion off, that will be a cost savings. It's not going to be a huge cost saving, but it would take care of the per diem, I believe, and would take care of 200 miles of wear and tear on the vehicle. But I am working on that.
Okay.
So we have your
I
motion.
have a motion, but there's no second.
No
so.
second, okay. So your motion lies where,
I'll withdraw my motion and
Okay.
just remind everyone that the funding has to come from somewhere to operate all these services that the library provides, and not only this year, but next year we'll do the same. If we don't increase the library taxes, we won't have the money to provide the services. And it's not a mandated service, so it could go away if we dissolve the library district, but it would not be my recommendation, but we got to have money to pay for these things.
That's true.
Yes.
That's true. Thank you very much. All right, moving on to item number 41, I believe. Is that correct, Clerk?
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion to approve.
We have a motion for approval
Second.
and a second. Any further discussion?
Oh, sure.
There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I've got a request from a person here on the dais for a 5-minute break. Can we do that? Will 5 minutes be sufficient? Taking a 5-minute break.
No, I have those.
We'll
board
reconvene
meetings, and I will
reconvene the
tell
meeting
you,
at this time?
The discussion that went on, it basically.
And I believe that brings us to item number 42. Is that correct?
Yes.
Discussion, possible action regarding High Ground Inc.'s request for representation from Environmental Defense Fund.
Chairman Watson, I believe we're not going to take any action on that item.
Okay. Item number 43, discussion, possible action for the adoption of Board Resolution number 2017-125, opposing the transfer of any fourth priority Colorado River water to the Central Arizona Project based on the proposed acquisition of lands in the Mojave Valley Irrigation Drainage District.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Questions? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried unanimously. Item number 44, discussion, possible action regarding setting a public hearing November 6th to repeal or amend the Mojave County Ordinance 2017-02 adopted on August 7th. Board meeting for the adoption, the increased fees for services provided Mojave County Building Code, and refer it back to Developmental Services for review.
Chairman Watson, I put this on, it is this, these next two are just to set public hearings. I'm fine with just, doing that unless you want to talk about it, because I believe the time to talk about it would be at the public hearing. But if people want the discussion, I have a statement, but I'll be happy, for the sake of time, to wait until the public hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Can I make a motion to approve item 44?
Motion to approve?
Second.
And a second? There any further discussion? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
No.
Motion carried. Item number 45, discussion, possible action, setting a public hearing for the repeal or amendment Mojave County Ordinance adopted on August 7th, which added the new fees and increased fees for planning and zoning, subdivisional entitlements, and changes in the structure of automated fees, and refer back to the Developmental Services Department for review and presentation to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Chairman Watson, I just said that I didn't want to talk about it, but Medea's Army has been sitting here all meeting, waiting to talk about this, and as the chairman of the Building Code Advisory Board, and if I could just have a minute to talk about it and call him up. One of the big reasons we're bringing this, I'd like to bring this back and have them rescinded, was because when, on the August 7th budget meeting, when we were presented these fee increases, Supervisor Johnson asked Tim Walsh if the Building Code Advisory Board had any issues with them. And at that time, he said no. But when you read the minutes, tells a whole different story. In fact, the board was very, very cautious, and they were very sober, and they were saying you have to be very careful. They gave some suggestions. They said that we should do it slowly and carefully, come back to, and And I'd like to just, if you will, if I can just ask Chairman Arzami to come down and just back that up. And then it was backed up again after we passed it. They had another meeting that just took place actually last week. It had been continued from the beginning of September. And again, they said that they backed the rescinding of the fees and starting over. Not saying that there shouldn't be some kind of fee hike or something like that, but believe that the process was flawed. And as we just did when you voted to do the wording, there was just so many mistakes made. So I think it's just better to go back to the beginning and start over and have public input into this. And I just think it would be better for the public trust and for all of that to happen. And I think that Tim Walsh agrees with me, he's here too, that perhaps it was done too quickly. He didn't even have a chance during that August 7th meeting to really explain all our options, because there were other options besides what we ended up voting for. It was just done very quickly. So again, I'm only talking about this because Mehdi has been sitting here all this time. So just to back up what I'm saying, that the Building Code Advisory Board supports rescinding these ordinances and sending it back to Development Services to start over. That's all.
Thank you. Did you want to come down and speak briefly?
Chairman Watson, while he's coming.
My name is Mehdi Azarmi, 1896 Clear Lake Drive, Fort Mojave, Arizona. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. Code Advisory Board consists of some seasoned contractors, architects like Toby Orr, Paul Silberg, myself, Keith Walker, and a few other ones that have been around for many, many years. So when we had the opportunity to review the suggestions or the recommendation that we had from the department, our intention was and again, if you look at the minutes, it was very clear that by the state law, building permits or the fee that you charge is for the services rendered. That is in the state law language. And basically what we said is that, instead of imposing like a larger dollar amount, let's go ahead and start with 35% and then make sure that we increase the customer service as well. And that was, the intention of the Code Advisory Board. And I'm positively sure that, Director Walsh also, was agreeable on that. And I know that there was some misunderstanding in the way, but I can assure you that, talking to Director Walsh afterward and several opportunities I had, his intention was not to just, go ahead and, go to the higher limits and, not to support that with some customer service or provide more services in. Unfortunately, during this time, there are some changes or there are some work that Director Walsh is working on the building department. There are some misunderstandings that he's attending to and trying to clear it between the old culture to the new culture. I'm talking about Nick Hunt and also the other building official versus Director Walsh and the new building official. And he's trying really hard to basically get that taken care of. So that's why the board, Code Advisory Board in the last meeting said that because we raised the fee up, but somehow the services started to go down, it's better to resend it right now and have some time to review it and come back with a plan that would be short-term and long-term on this particular thing. And that was the recommendation of unanimously by the Code Advisory Board on that one.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Romani?
No, Tim Walsh wants to say something, but again, this is just to set the public hearing, and if it's the will of the board to set the public hearing, I'm sure we'll be speaking further about all of this.
Okay, great. All right.
Thank you.
There is a motion on the floor with a second.
There's no motion. There is nothing. I make a motion to approve item 45.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. On to item number 46, discussion, possible action for the adoption of proclamation naming the month of October as Cybersecurity Month in Mojave County, to be signed by the chairman. And Supervisor Johnson has volunteered to give his short synopsis of this proclamation.
Everybody had a chance to review it in the agenda package. If you would like to support the proclamation for the month of October as Cybersecurity Month. I don't plan on reading it.
I make a motion to support.
We have a motion to approve
Second.
and a second. Questions? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried unanimously. And thank you for bringing that to us, Supervisor Johnson. Item number 47, discussion possible action regarding the 5-year plan on court-related buildings. Supervisor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I brought this up to see if we could, if the board wants to do it. Last meeting, we went ahead with the building of a new court. Not included in that was a remodel of the old building, but something's going to have to be done with the JPs, whether they're staying there, whether they're moving. But I think we have our maintenance program, so I think it'd be a good idea to say, okay, this is what we're going to do with the courts, so that we know that we have extra space we're going to get rid of, whether it be the trailers that we have now, or if we're moving them, or whatever, just to get a plan in place on our excess buildings that we might have. Just something to get direct staff to bring us back with a proposal.
Great. Is that in the form of a motion?
I'd make a motion to direct staff to come back with a 5-year plan regarding use of court buildings, or any excessive buildings we have as far as maintenance goes.
Okay.
Second.
And I'll second the motion. Any further questions? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried unanimously. We've dealt with item number 48, 49, and 50. That brings us to item number 51. Discussion, possible action, adoption of the board resolution opposing the Arizona Department of Transportation's roundabouts to be installed on State Routes 95 at Aztec and at Camp Mojave in Fort Mojave area. This is brought to us by Supervisor Lois Wakamoto.
The ADOT has decided that, for safety reasons, that 2 roundabouts should be placed at these 2 locations, Aztec and Camp Mojave Road. They're within a mile of each other. And having spoken to the fire department, to the hospital, and to the people that have businesses on this route, I've looked at the situation, and there's some serious concerns about response time as far as fire department and hospitals getting to their locations in a timely manner. The other thing is that the way the roundabouts are planned, it is going to destroy some of the businesses that are there, that are on the frontage road. These are small businesses that are service industry businesses, and they will, because they're service industry and there's no access to them directly, people will just find other places to do their business. The third thing, and maybe the most important thing, is with the 2 roundabouts on Highway 95, local people and people that know the area will, because it's only a mile, will choose to use county roads to bypass those areas. And it will force additional traffic and speed down residential and into school zones. Also, it will cause the county to have more dollars spent on county roads. And if safety is the issue, trading accidents on Highway 95 for accidents in residential areas is not solving the problem. The other thing is, as travelers come up Highway 95, that's the main thoroughfare between California, Fort Mojave, Mojave Valley, and into Bullhead. It will force the traffic because of speed down the Needles Highway, which is not safer, but it's faster. Forcing the travelers down the Needles Highway will then focus and feature Laughlin, affecting the economic development in our areas. So with these things in mind, I would ask that the board adopt a resolution similar to the one in Bullhead City, actually opposing the Department of Transportation installing the roundabouts in these two areas.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second for the adoption of resolution opposing the roundabout. Any further discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I won't be supporting this. The reason is that I don't think it's necessary. There was a roundabout proposed in Lake Havasu. We had a meeting with ADOT. It was canceled in Lake Havasu. We put one in Golden Shores, and we put one on the highway out here, and I think it's something that just the individual needs to be done. I don't know that the board should take a position like this when we've already allowed two of them to be put in.
Can I speak about the roundabout in Golden Shores, which also happens to be in my district? We put the roundabout in Golden Shores. I was probably a week into being supervisor when I get a call from one of the business owners that said, the roundabout that you put is now, the drainage is now flooding my store. We're having to sandbag it. We had to have Mr. Letowski and his department out there pumping water to drain the situation. The people in that area said they went to different meetings, voiced that they didn't want it, they got it. The roundabout was not a success, and we, as a county, are now correcting the design that was there. And so the roundabout in Golden Shores was a problem, and even though Transportation said, well, this is a 5-year flood that they suffered, it didn't matter because it happened now. So that issue and the difference in what is in Golden Shores and Highway 95 are two different issues. Highway 95 is already developed. I'm just looking for support from the board. We've met with ADOT several times. We've gone to their public meetings, and I just think that if we have support from the board, because my district, this is county, we don't have a mayor that can support this issue, looking for some support as we speak to them, and hopefully we'll just we can rectify the situation and not have it go on.
Chairman Watson, my district, District 2, is also in agreement that we should not have these roundabouts for many different reasons. It's going to affect members of my district. That's why Bullhead City Council got involved. And I wish I knew the secret of Lake Havasu, because we have talked till we're blue in the face. We've been told you're going to like them, you're going to learn to love them, you're going to get them. And it's been quite a battle. We have committees in Bullhead City that are gathering petitions. Thousands. They're getting thousands. People don't want them for a variety of reasons. But we understand we have safety issues. We've got traffic accidents and fatalities. We understand that. So we are sort of moving forward with ADOT, and this is just part of it. So we hope that we can support this along with District 2 and District 5.
Okay. We have several people. We have several people signed up to speak to the item.
I'd also like to make a comment when it's time.
Okay. Barbara Pape.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Board of Supervisors. I'm here to tell you that we do have a problem. A lot of our community does not want the roundabouts. We ask you of the Board of Supervisors to pass this opposition for these planned roundabouts that ADOT has put together. This, due to the design that does not fit our transit system, and it does not have an evacuation plan or emergency design for that kind of situation. So it's a very critical problem, and we need to have evacuation and emergencies accessibility for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bates. Roy Ann Ortiz.
Roy Ann Ortiz, 1550 Monte Vista Drive in Bullhead City. I'm up here maybe at the risk of my own life because I am in favor of having it at Aztec. I'm not in favor of Camp Mojave. I think one would be enough. Apparently, based on the study that ADOT did, over a 10-year period, 7 deaths occurred, plus thousands of accidents, some which resulted in permanent disabilities. I don't want to be the one driving through that intersection to maybe be the one that is disabled as a result of an accident or killed as a result of an accident. Because those people that are going through that intersection, they are going through red lights to get where they want to go. They're in a hurry. And that's one of the reasons why I am for that. And with regards to one of the whereases that had to do with it'll destroy small business, a roundabout was done in Prescott. I heard it from someone when I was at the county fair. They said it's working beautifully, and no small business went out. Nobody along that roadway where it was done went out of business. They made accommodations for the businesses, so I think that's an inappropriate whereas. Small businesses will be destroyed because I don't think they will be. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ortiz. Pardon me?
I'd asked to speak on this issue, but she said that I didn't get my figure time.
Well, I'll move off my usual protocol and let you speak, ma'am. Jump up.
Thank you, Chairman Watson. Thank you so much. Eva Corbett, 2426 Topanga Drive, Bullhead City. I'm opposed to the roundabout because when you get, we're an elder community, and there's 2 things we don't know how to do is merge and yield. So those 2 things you have to know how to do to be in a roundabout, sir. And we don't know how to do that. So it's not a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I understand that you may need lessons in merging, but I would certainly recommend that you yield as often as possible. I just have a comment to make. I'm not in favor of these 2 roundabouts at these 2 locations, and just these 2 locations. Roundabouts do a tremendous job in the right places. If you've ever waited in Wickenburg, Arizona for 45 minutes to try to get through Wickenburg, when they had the stoplight, that was cured by a roundabout. So,
Hurt the business.
but in this case, I'm very much opposed just because of the locations of these 2. So I just want to make that clarification. So we have a motion?
I wanted to make a comment as well. Okay, Roundabouts are still fairly new in Arizona, and using them correctly can take some practice. And I want to reference that to some material I read back in the 1920s. People had trouble getting used to the 3-color code traffic lights and the related traffic laws that came with them. So, you know, with that being said, intersections are a dangerous place for drivers, and roundabouts are just one solution and are gaining support throughout the state because people are getting used to their simplicity and because they're saving lives. And personally, as a former law officer, I'm not opposed to saving lives, nor am I opposed to roundabouts in the right conditions, as Supervisor Watson just stated. It's been proven that these roundabouts increase safety with their lower speeds and the severity of their accidents being reduced down to just fender benders. And believe me, if somebody that you loved, if you knew that they were going to be in a traffic accident at Aztec and 95 tomorrow, would you rather it be a roundabout there or a traffic light? Yeah, traffic light, you're going to be probably a head-on or a T-bone collision at 45. A roundabout's going to be 20, maybe a side swipe. So with that being said, I've spoke to our ADOT representative, and he assures me that this roundabout is being planned with the raised median in the lanes, which keeps people in their lanes that don't know how to merge or not, or maybe distracted drivers that are on their social media accounts complaining about the roundabout that they're in at the time. But, you know, I think ADOT has to carefully assess each location that they put a roundabout in the state of Arizona. And it is their decision. It's a state highway. Mr. Stump assures me that various studies are still ongoing, and that's why he hasn't held any public meetings in the area down there where the citizens can have some input. And I know that there's petitions being circulated by some citizens, but there's also the other side, citizens that like the idea. So I think the public hearings are coming up as soon as these studies are complete so that they have the facts and the figures. But I was told by Mr. Stump that they're studying a 12-mile corridor down there on Highway 95. And in the last 5 years, there's been 21 deaths in that corridor, and 6 of those were within the last year. So I just wanted to point that out. It's a dangerous area down there.
Could I answer some of this? I did talk to Mr. Stump, and I told him, I said, we're not against safety. That's not the whole issue. We want safer Highway 95. We're looking for alternatives to do this. But the other thing that I asked him, I said, as you look at your accident reports, I want you to pull out the time of the accidents, and I gave him a pretty wide span. I said, if you look at accidents, say, from 8 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at night, that's one thing, that's kind of normal traffic hours. I said, but if you look at traffic accidents that are happening, say, 12 to 3 or so, that's a different type of accident. Those accidents may or may not have been able to happen anywhere. And then I wanted him to pull out the ones that happened because of intoxication. So just look, I wanted him to look at those things and tell me when those accidents happen and how we can evaluate that corner, logically. The other thing is, now I forgot.
Say one more thing. Mr. Stump also, when he was giving his presentation here, I asked him specifically if he spoke to McDonald's, because they're a big business there on the intersection, and he assured me that they were okay with it. So I called the owner of McDonald's, and he said, oh, is that what they told you? He said, not only do I believe it's going to kill my business, it's with McDonald's corporate, and they're planning a lawsuit. So, I think there's some misinformation going around ADOT as well. I'm not saying that Alvin Stump purposely misled us. I think that there's a lot of hoping and wishing and dreaming going on, but what we're asking for is just to take a second look, maybe do a few different things, little smaller things before they dig up our streets and spend $12 million to see if there's ways. The people who live there on that street and businesses on that highway, they see it, they know, and they have great suggestions. So I'm confident that we can work with ADOT to come up with some other ways that we could slow down traffic.
Very good. Is there a motion on the floor? And a second. Any further discussion? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. Item number 52, discussion, possible action for the appointment of Mojave County Supervisor to fill vacant appointment, Clean Colorado River Sustainability Coalition. And is this an appointment that
What are we doing?
Supervisor Angus is interested in, or an appointment that Supervisor?
No.
This is the
This is-
point, there was the wrong name on the last agenda. It said the sewer district or something.
Okay,
And this is the same appointment, but it's,
Yeah. I make a motion that we appoint Lois Wakamoto to fill the vacant appointment on the Clean Colorado River Sustainability Coalition.
Second.
and a second. Questions? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Item 53, discussion possible action, appoint Supervisor Lois Wakamoto as a Mojave County representative to the Mojave County Water Authority.
Chairman Watson, looks like we're getting the new guy, huh? I make a motion that we appoint Supervisor Wakamoto as Mojave County representative to the Mojave County Water Authority.
I'll second the motion. Questions?
Discussion. I'll be voting against this, not that I don't think Supervisor can't do a good job, but I think we really need to look into this Mojave County Water Authority. It was only formed to take care of the Kingman water, and it's gotten into a corporation that buys and sells water, and it's way bigger. It never did file its forms with the state as it was required to do, and that's the whole thing. I don't think we have any business being involved in it.
Chairman Watson, that's the first I've ever heard of this, so it's troubling enough, or I'm curious enough. Can we get some further information?
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem with the supervisor being on it, just.
Right, but, all right,
Whether or
but
not we
I just want to know more about it. I guess I'll do that on my own.
Okay. There being no further discussion, those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Item number 54, discussion, possible action. Sitting as the Board of Equalization, approve the Board of Equalization hearing officers' recommendations regarding petitions for the review of real property valuation for 2017.
Can the clerk go over all these for us, sir? I guess not.
We have did you make a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. I do have one person that wants to speak to it, and I believe she's gone. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried.
Motion
Ladies and
to
gentlemen,
adjourn.
thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Meeting adjourned.
They have timelines by the state.